we get the right camera. Let me check the camera real quick.
So, you're running.
Oh, okay, there it is. Camera popped in. Okay, there's the view. Yes. And all right, and I'm gonna unhide. 1, 2, 3.
Okay.
All right, and okay. Of course, where's the clicker? Do we have? Okay, just in case if you need to, that should be just fine. All right.
Cool. Cool.
Test 1, 2.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Sam Donaldson. I'm the Interim Associate Dean for Academic Affairs here at the College of Law, and on behalf of my professional staff and faculty colleagues here at GSU College of Law, we'd like to welcome you to Atlanta, to CALICon, and especially to the College of Law. I also bring greetings on behalf of our Dean, Courtney Anderson. Dean Anderson had wanted to be here to give this welcome in person, but she was called to attend the State Bar of Georgia annual meeting today in Florida. So I asked her if she had any special message that she wanted me to convey, and she sent me this. Welcome. Both GSU Law and CALI have an awful lot in common. Both of us were founded in 1982. Which is right, we're both 43 years old, which means that we are about to get a divorce and buy a very expensive car as we experience a midlife crisis, but we'll get through it to the other side, at least that's what our therapist tells us. But more than that, we're both institutions that are dedicated to helping our students be prepared for the various career paths that they will pursue with their JD. You may remember that we hosted CALICon back in 2016 when the dominant themes on the agenda were distance education, social media, Blackboard, and Canvas. On the program that year, there was one session that was devoted to artificial intelligence. Looking at the agenda for this year's conference, that seems to have taken over the agenda and be the dominant theme to consider, which seems appropriate. We're very excited to host a conference at this time when really technology is having such a profound impact on the practice of law as well as at law schools. AI, if you think about it, is very much like today's law student. It receives a tremendous amount of information, it spits it all back out, and it makes up citations. It's important for us to get a handle on it. Again, we're delighted to have you here. Thanks so much. How appropriate is it that Sam Donaldson introduces John Mayer, who will probably then turn the program over to Britney Spears at some point thereafter. But please enjoy your time here at the College of Law. We're delighted to have you and have a great and successful conference.
Thank you, Sam. All right, thanks, folks. So here we are at CALICon once again. We've been doing this for a while, 35 years. This is the 35th conference. This all started out as a kooky idea by me and Tom Bruce. May he rest in peace. Kidding, he hasn't died. But I love to start that rumor. And we called the first conference, Conference for Law School Computing Professionals. Quickly dropped that. And of course, as Dean said, we were here, 9 years ago. And so I decided, to wear the t-shirt here right now. I want to make sure you guys.
Hey, John.
Oh, there we are. No money, no money. There we go. All right. So there it is. But But really, what I really want to do is have this T-shirt on, so, let's get started here. All right. So welcome to the conference. Oh, wait. Power to Harvard, right? All right. So, but this goes back to 2014, so I'm getting close, right? I'm only 10 years away. Let's see what else we got. Okay. Oh, every time you do something, you get ads, right? So, Justia. No, Justia is not an ad. Justia is a supporter of the conference, and we really appreciate their support, so had to include that. All right, wait, no, let's see what else we got here. Oh, vintage. So this goes back to, I think, 2003 or 4. It was called Evolution Revolution. You can't see the graphic very well, but it starts from a monkey carrying a yellow pad up to somebody holding on to a VR gig. And right before that is a law professor as a Neanderthal holding a laptop. So I thought that was pretty funny. All right, now let's, come on, I know it's in here somewhere. Next slide. Oh, yeah, some assembly required. The Lego conference, that was a lot of fun. What year was that? 2012. I think I'm going in the wrong direction here. All right, let's see what we got here. Oh, yeah. Oh, hey, Chicago's got a new pope, and damn are we proud of it. All right. What's that doing in there? All right. Oh, this is our Grateful Dead years. But it's very close. CALICon 2023. No, come on. I know I can do this. There we go. All right, CALICon. I'll clean that up later. Now I got to put the glasses on because I'm blind as a bat without those. All right. So I have a lot of people to thank. I will be swift. I have some housekeeping to do, and then we'll get to our keynote speaker. Thank you to Georgia State for hosting us the second time. It's an amazingly beautiful facility. It's really close to the hotel. We love that. Atlanta's easy to get to. And so we really appreciate that. And a shout out to Chris Niedringhaus, who has abandoned Georgia State to go work for University of South Carolina, but she's the one that got me here both times, or got us here both times. So got to give her that credit. All right. Of course, I have to thank the sponsors of this conference: National Society for Legal Technology, Doug Lusk, Bloomberg Law, EdTech, and Digital, and Justia, who provide extraordinary support for in the name of the free law movement, OYE, law.gov, law.cornell.edu. Thank you, folks. I have to always thank my board of directors because they serve gratis. They volunteer to help CALI out. We really appreciate that. And especially shout out to David Kemp, Michelle Hook-Dewey, and Joe Rosenberg, who are our 3 brand new board members this year. Oh yeah, thank you. Thank you. Probably like half of you are speakers, so thanks to almost all of you for choosing to come and share experiences at this conference. We couldn't do it without you, right? Thanks to my staff who actually do all the work. I just make fun of them and embarrass them. We haven't gotten a cartoon picture of John Jorgensen done yet. It's been a few months. I got to get on that. But he's our latest addition to the CALI staff. Of course, Ranella and Scott and Elmer, who did a lot of the heavy lifting for this conference. This year's conference, we got like 3/4 are either first time. Let's do it. How many of you are the first time you've ever been to CALI conference? That's quite a bit. All right. Hope you weren't too shocked by my striptease. What I see here is that the old guys are dying because they're not here. I, of course, have been to all 35 conferences. I guess I have to have been to all 35 conferences. And I lord that over anybody who claims to have more experience than me. But it's definitely a time when it's hard to attract people to a general purpose community sharing conference. Our goal was always that there were these 3 cohorts in legal education who barely talk to each other. Faculty who went to their conferences, ALS or such, law librarians went to ALL, and wished people would talk to them more, and then the tech staff who didn't want anybody to talk to them. And we invited them to be here, not so that there could be a track for each one, but so that there could be tracks in which they all mix and mingle and share ideas and suggestions and improvements in the use of technology in legal education. It's been tough to hit that goal, to accomplish that. But we persist. Nevertheless, we persist. So we'll see how that goes. There's going to be a couple of tours. As my understanding is they're both days. So lunch is an hour and a half, and it starts at 11:30. So if you want to go on a tour, eat fast, and then head up to the library circulation desk or head to room 630, and they'll give you a quick tour of the library and the tech installed in this. Yesterday, in doing the tech walkthrough with Samir, I really missed all that conversation when I was the IT guy at Chicago Kent. I must have given like 100 tours of that building when we built that technology. And so, definitely learn about the things they've done. They've just come through a very expensive, a very large upgrade to the tech in all of the classrooms, and they're not done yet. So lots of fascinating stuff going on there. I've been told, correct me if I'm wrong with this, use the visitor at GSU Wi-Fi, because then you don't have to enter a username and a password. Huh? All right. Quick tip. All right, if there are session changes, they're going to be on the Google Drive that you all should have gotten the link for. And that's also for you virtual people. Actually, I should say for you virtual people, that's where all the Zoom links are. In case you didn't notice, when you get in there, there's another tab that says say hi to Elmer. Go there and type Elmer a little note. And I didn't tell Elmer I was going to do that. So I'm very interested to see what you're going to write. Oh, shit, Elmer's here. All right. There is no formal reception on Thursday because budgets. So we're going to informally meet up at the Sundial, which is the restaurant at the top of the Westin, and Scott will buy you a drink. And we got Greg and Extegrity to agree to pitch in on that as well. So buy one of the fancy drinks, I guess. Yeah. Dinner on your own, though. We can't afford to buy you dinner on Thursday night, all right? All right, there's a raffle Friday after the closing talk. You don't have to be present to win. Staff, board, and sponsors are not eligible. Sorry, not sorry, right? Yeah, wouldn't be fair. We're giving out all sorts of weird and cool things, which is tradition for the CALI conference. Outlet mustaches, nerdy floor mats, multi-function roughneck pens, non-contact infrared thermometers, things that you would need to use in a law school. The Epic Magnetic Battle Game Clask, those Swedes, and pocket knife sharpeners. Good luck getting that through TSA. And a couple of emergency kits for home office, car, outdoor, hiking, travel. It's appropriate for that particular thing because the last conference here the theme was, anybody remember? The Year of Learning Dangerously. And we gave out a book, 100 Survival Skills, as well as a tactical pen that you can use to smash through the window of your car in case you ever drive into a body of water. And most of those did get through TSA, I understand. But the survival book included things like how to hotwire a Cessna and, strange stuff that people were like, John, why are you giving this book away? But it fit the theme really well. And the coolest thing of the raffle, of course, is the VR glasses, and I understand it includes a copy of Batman Arkham, in the box, because you're not going to use VR for any educational purposes. You're going to use it to play games, right? Yeah. Finally, Justia has provided us gift cards, and we took the money and separated it into this many cards so that practically half of you are going to get something out of this raffle, which is awesome. That's great. All right. I especially wanted to call out thanks to Tim and Tracy, Stacy. Oof, I do that all the time. And of course, the FreeWA people who are backing that. Thank you. So here we are at our conference. Really, it's all about AI these days, isn't it? And this is one of those, is this the Gartner hype cycle or something like that? And I tried to put AI on this or find where we are in various things. Mass media hype begins and negative press begins, and yet that seems to be going on for the last 2 or 3 years. So it's not like we're moving along that curve. Methodologies and best practices developing. I think the session right after this is on benchmarking, which is exactly that sort of thing. And it seems to indicate, though, it's way over there for mature technologies. I don't consider AI mature yet. Second and third generation tools, but yet we're looking for ChatGPT 5. Or we're waiting for ChatGPT 5. So it feels like right now we're going through everything, everywhere, all at once, right? Peak of inflated expectations, trough of disillusionment, slope of enlightenment. I don't think we're at the plateau of productivity. We are living in very interesting times. And I like to cut things down to the simplest possible way of thinking about it. Is this just another tool, or does this change everything? How many people think it's just another tool? Ooh, how many think this changes everything? All right, the changes everything wins. How about both? Yeah, all right, that's the back out. But I remember at past conferences when we used to say, lawyers will never use personal computers. My very first conference before this, when I started working at Chicago Kent in '87, was the lawyers and personal computers. And the big issue there was a survey we did of how many lawyers actually have a computer on their desk. And the number was just passing 50%, and that was awesome. So that's obviously happened. It's impossible to read from a computer screen for more than 30 minutes. When we were talking about ebooks in 1992 using folio views, people were like, students will never want to read off a computer screen. Of course, the computer screens were crap then, but even that persisted for at least more than a decade or two. The idea that your eyes would bleed or melt out of your head if you had to read too much on a computer screen because outer limits would suck your brain out. And of course, today, my phone tells me, you're doing pretty good. You've only been on your phone 37 hours today, or something like that. It's like, yeah, thanks. Not only am I on my phone too much, I feel bad about it. And my phone is telling me that. Distance learning doesn't work. Man, heard this all the time long before COVID. The idea that you could do anything through a video or a recording or something like that. And our opinions changed hard on that. And of course, the classic, student printing is dead. Actually, I think student printing is dead, right? Student printing is dead, please.
We still have a Lexus printer on it. If you come to the library tour, I will make the Lexus printer a fixed stop.
Oh, no.
10 years old.
No, student printing is dead. It's dead, Jim, it's dead. All right, so right now I read things like every lawyer must learn AI. Every student must learn AI. This can solve big challenges in legal education. This can solve big challenges in access to justice. I don't know. And so I have to go back to conference themes and say the devil is in the details, right? We got to crack that open and find out more. Or even better, there and back again. I have heard about AI coming for my entire life, my entire professional life, 40 years, and I know that there's a book that was written in the 60s by Herbert Dreyfus called What Computers Can't Do, in which he eviscerates the AI guys of the time. Of course, they were NLP guys, natural language processing, or rule-based engine sort of guys. And then 20 years later, he wrote another book, and he titled it What Computers Still Can't Do, because all the promises that had been given still hadn't come through. Now, I'll grant you, things have changed a lot. Things are different this time. I believe they are, because it is amazing what these tools can do. But I think it only gets interesting when it becomes ubiquitously available and we can play with it ourselves. And so I finish off with a theme from a 2005 conference that we need the open versions of these so that we can play with these tools and conform them to our needs ourselves, to give ourselves and our students and our schools agency. All right, and so I'm hoping that in the next couple of days you will get a lot of that from this conference. So we've invited Sam Harden. You can start coming up here. You can start like creeping. Sam Harden to speak. Sam is works at Pro Bono Net. Pro Bono Net powers Law Help Interactive, and Law Help Interactive is where we stuck an awful lot of effort and partnered with you guys with A to J Author, and that's helped almost 10 million people just with A to J Author, and I imagine it's double that with Pro Bono Net because they also host the Doc Assemble and do a lot of other amazing and cool things. So I'm really delighted to have someone from Pro Bono Net come and be a keynote. But really, that's not how I got to know you. I got to know you because I started reading your Substack, and I loved the title of your thing, Team Do Something. Or, I used to joke all the time, CALI is not a think tank, CALI is a do tank. So I that sort of resonated with me. And your writings were inspiring and interesting. You're a lawyer, a technologist, a believer that you can help bridge the access to justice gap with technology. I am too. You like to get your hands dirty, and you're constantly building and experimenting. So, Sam, come and share your knowledge with us. Yep.
Right.
And while you're plugging in, any questions? Housekeeping that I missed? Dan, Elmer? Scott? Good? And for you Zoom people, you can see and hear okay? Yes.
All right, it worked. All right, I want to thank John for inviting me. Thank everybody for being here. I didn't realize that both CALI and Georgia State were born in 1982. I was born in 1982. I am hopeful that I'm not going through a midlife crisis. And I'm hopeful that I'm not going through divorce, because that would be news to me when I get home. But thank you all for having me. John invited me, and I was really excited to come. This was my first CaliCon. I had heard about it. I had thought about going in the past, so I'm excited to be here. And what I'm talking about today, and I'll try and work through my slides, is what I call the idea of abundant law, right? What should the future look like if we're thinking in terms of abundance and not scarcity? First, I want to talk about a guy named Jon Snow. Does anybody remember Jon Snow? Not the Game of Thrones Jon Snow. He is not as good looking as this Jon Snow, frankly. Jon Snow was a British, I would call him, I guess, an epidemiologist. They didn't really have that term, I don't think. But he was in London in 1854. And in 1854, London was going through a really bad cholera epidemic. And I think John probably wanted me to talk about AI, and I'm talking about cholera in 1850s London. But we'll get to that. And the treatments for cholera were not great, right? That's like a cartoon that was in one of the newspapers of the day. A cholera patient, this is what they have to suffer through before they die. Jon Snow put his mind to solving this cholera epidemic, and what he did is he made this map, right? This is a map of blocks in London and outbreaks and cases and things like that. And Jon Snow figured out everything is coming from one place. Everything is coming from one well, like inside London. And how do we solve this problem? And I'll get back to Jon Snow in a minute. But what I want to talk about really is whether or not there actually is an access to justice crisis. Everybody's heard the term access to justice crisis, right? Like it's all over. If you follow like LSC's, like it's, questionable about their budgets. They provide billions of dollars in funding for organizations that provide legal aid. But I always wonder, like, is this really a thing? And I work at Pro Bono Net. Our job is to create technology to solve this problem, right? But I think we should think about, is it a problem that we act like needs solving? To a lot of lawyers, I'm a licensed lawyer in Florida, the court system works fine. I practice criminal law, I practice civil law, I represented nursing homes, hospital chains, doctors. I represented people facing criminal accusations in court. The justice system worked great for me as a lawyer. It worked great for my clients, mostly because they had lawyers, right? And honestly, the problem that a lot of lawyers have is their phone doesn't ring enough. There's not enough people calling them to hire them, right? I had a small two-man law firm for a while. That was our big problem, was getting people to call. At the start of every month, we'd stare at the phone and wait for it to ring. Please hire us, please pay us money. There's got to be people out there that need lawyers, right? Where are they? Lawyers do a lot of pro bono. I pulled this from the pro bono conference, pro bono reporting thing, 5 million hours of pro bono done in 2022. That's a lot of pro bono hours. If you do the math on $300 an hour, which is, I think, average going rate, if you're not with like Jones Day or one of those ginormous firms, $300 an hour, that's $1.5 billion, right? In pro bono, just in 2022. And does anybody know this movie? Am I the only person that likes this movie? Devil's Advocate, Al Pacino, right? When Keanu Reeves asked him, why the law, right? Why the law? Because the lawyers are the new priesthood. It gets us a backstage pass to everything. Everything is great for lawyers. We get paid to represent people. We work the justice system to our advantage, right? And I should add, what I'm saying is not the opinion of Pro Bono Net, right? So that's understood. This article always fascinated me. There's an organization called Upsolve that wants to give legal advice through intermediaries who are not lawyers to people facing bankruptcy. They train these people. They are going to vet these people. And legal aid organizations have opposed this, saying, no, you can't. This is our job. This is lawyers' job, right? There's enough. There's enough to go around. That's the attitude behind this, I think, right? Maybe there's too many lawyers. Anybody drive on 75 to get here? Right? I live in Florida, right? This is, when you drive around, this is what you see. In Florida, you see John Morgan. You see Ryan Cappy's a Florida guy. You see it on buses. You see it on, some of this is from Philadelphia. Like Guns and Dope, Don't Lose Hope. That's my favorite one. Maybe there's too many lawyers. Maybe. This is from a comment from the Florida Bar, recommended seeing out if we could have reciprocity. Florida is one of the few jurisdictions that does not reciprocate with others for licensing of attorneys, right? And they floated this idea, maybe we should have reciprocity back in, this is over 10 years ago, I think. Maybe less, maybe 9 years ago. This is one of the comments, this is my favorite one, that somebody wrote in and it was published in the Florida Bar News, right? If reciprocity is allowed, that will only encourage more attorneys. We have 100,000 attorneys. We have law schools churning them out willy-nilly, right? The quality of work is going to go down because there are simply too many. It's not a problem if people can't find lawyers. We have too many lawyers. They're like, we have to wade through them, is the attitude, I think, right? So That's why I always wonder, like, is there really a crisis? Is there an access to justice crisis? But what is actually the reality when we look at the situation on the ground? Do we have too many lawyers? Do we have a surplus of professionals that are ready and willing to help people? But the reality is the opposite, right? Which is fascinating to me. We have lawyers acting as if scarcity is a good, or that there is no scarcity, right? That everything's great, the justice system is fine. Don't look, it's fine. Everything's great, we're getting paid, everything's great. We just need more clients, frankly. We need more people to pay us, that's what we need. But when LSC does their justice gap report, and I like this because it shows that things get worse over time, right? 2005, it was a rough guesstimate, but they said 80% of people below at 125% or below of the federal poverty guidelines don't get enough legal help. 2017, that went up to 86%, 2022, 92%. Things are going in a different direction than if there's an abundance of lawyers. In Florida courts, where I live, I ran some numbers. They have this case-like dashboard where you can see numbers of cases in court. 152,000 eviction cases, 694,000 small claims cases, a lot of small claims cases, 80,000-ish domestic violence or repeat violence cases. These are in civil court, not criminal court. Civil court is the way it's separated out in Florida, right? And when they run the numbers, these are guesstimates, so don't hold me to these. They're guesstimates I pulled from somebody's article. 63% are self-represented in eviction and small claims, 80% in domestic violence court, right? Kind of shocking, honestly, if there's enough lawyers to go around, or more than enough, you know? One idea that has been floated to solve this problem, right? People at the lower end of the economic spectrum not having enough legal help, right? Is that why don't we do what we did with Gideon v. Wainwright, which I can never say the correct way. Why don't we make legal representation a right and not a privilege in civil court, right? I have been to many dinners where at conferences, you know, they're always for state bar associations and they're about access to justice. And inevitably someone gets up and talks about civil Gideon at this point. And it always gets a lot of applause. It's a big applause line, right? And it always strikes me as interesting because, you know, it sounds great, right? Why not? Why not give everybody a lawyer? If you have a court case, if you have a case with a case number, you get a free lawyer, right? Great. You get legal help, you get, you know, hours of attorney time, and it gets, I mean, lawyers get employed forever the way our system is set up. But I think we should look at some stats on whether or not civil Gideon is actually feasible economically, feasible with the attorneys we have now, you know? So some of the numbers that I've seen say there are about 19 million cases in lower civil court every year, everywhere in the US, right? That's 30 to 40 million litigants across the country every year. And based on guesstimates and things like this is back in the napkin stuff, okay? 60 to 70% of people are pro se in these cases. So we could say, if we use the high end of the numbers, 28 million people are without lawyers every year in court. People with a court case with a case number, right? I'm not talking about people who don't have a case yet that's filed in court, that are at risk of getting evicted, that are at risk of domestic violence, that are at risk of, you know, some sort of lopsided divorce thing going on. People who are at risk of a small claim being filed against them. People who have actual cases in court. The number I saw on lawyers in the US says 1.3 million. I think that is about right. I think that was from the ABA. But if we divide this stuff out, that means every lawyer gets 21.5 new clients every year, right? I'm a lawyer, I get 21.5 clients for this year, for myself to represent. 20 hours per client. right? Let's say average. Some will take more, some will take far less. Some will be like a phone call. Some will be like bill of 0.5, I wrote a letter, right? Some will be, oh my God, I spent 2 weeks on this, going to court and negotiating and things like that. If we do our due diligence as lawyers, 420 hours per year per attorney, on average. Back in the napkin again. So 2 and 2, I did civil defense. This is like a month of billing time. I'm kidding. 2 to 2.5 months of time every year spent on just this, right, for lawyers. That's kind of astonishing to me. But we can't. Lawyers can't work for free, right? We have to get paid. We have to pay our bills. We have to pay our support staff. We have to, pay our subscriptions to Westlaw and Lexis and Fastcase, VLEX, all those things. We have to get paid. So if we did this, and again, back of napkin, 560 million attorney hours each year, $300 an hour, it's like $160+ billion in attorney fees every year. That's over the state budgets of some big states. Florida, $116 billion a year in state budget. We're talking about an insane amount of money, to me, to accomplish civil Gideon, if we're talking about it. So why was I talking about Jon Snow at the beginning? Why bring that up? Why talk about a guy from London in 1854? Because I don't think we're going to pro bono or civil Gideon our way out of the representation crisis. I don't think we are. I don't think more lawyers is the problem or the solution. I think the problem is that we think in terms of scarcity, and we're afraid as lawyers to think differently, to think, what if things could be different? What if we weren't the only solution to this problem? One idea that gets kicked around is the idea of paraprofessionals in law. Law does have paraprofessionals. We have for a while. We've had paralegals, we've had legal assistants, things like that. If you worked in personal injury or seen how personal injury firms are structured, they make a lot of use out of paraprofessionals, frankly, and they do it really well. They have like a group of 2 or 3 or maybe 5 attorneys, unless they're John Morgan's firm that has like $5 billion. And under those attorneys is like a network of paralegals, legal assistants, case managers, things like that. And they structure in a really interesting, like a pyramid. It's very fascinating. Other firms don't do this. Other firms use lawyers as billing units, and personal injury firms don't, frankly. And so they structure it in kind of a more efficient way. But in healthcare, we have the idea of RNAs, or RNs, ARNPs, nurse anesthetists, another word I can't say, CNAs, right? It's a whole network of paraprofessionals. And, we look at healthcare and we think, great, what if we did something like triple LTs in Washington State, where we want to have paraprofessionals help lawyers and help people, and we want to license them, right? We want to keep them responsible, so we make them go to school for 2 years, not 3. We make them take a test that's kind of like the bar exam, but not really the bar exam, and we put really strict limits on how they can practice, right? They can only do family law cases or something like that, right? We do that, and it doesn't work because we put requirements on them, like they have to go to school for 2 years. They have to take a test that's like the bar exam, but not really the bar exam. They can only practice in family law. They can only be supervised by an attorney. So we put these really strict guidelines in place, but we never let things actually flourish. When I think of paraprofessionals, I think of, RNs, nurse anesthetists. I think those would be great, right? My son, a month and a half ago, we installed a zip line in our backyard. The day we installed the zip line, can anybody guess what happened? I hit my insurance deductible. We were in the emergency room not because I installed the zip line wrong, okay? I was very anal about measuring the angle of, from one tree to the other. I put everything in place. I ratcheted everything down. My youngest son thought it would be a good idea to have another kid fling him down the zip line. And surprise, we end up going to the emergency room. No one's fault, just, kids will be kids. And we were met by a cadre of paraprofessionals, right? RNs, nurse assistants, people checking us in. The doctor came in, we had a surgeon, like a specialized doctor, right? And it was great. They did a fantastic job. His cast is off. He has 3 limbs left. I'm kidding. He has all 4 limbs. But it just struck me, there's so much that healthcare does with paraprofessionals. When you go into an emergency room, you don't see like a bunch of doctors standing around in scrubs, right? Like, we got to get you into surgery. We don't know why, but we got to. That's kind of how we treat everything in law. We sideline paraprofessionals and we center the lawyers, right? Everybody has to have a lawyer. Be like going to an ER and everybody in there being a surgeon, right? Or being a doctor. And I think maybe things could look different. Things could look like this. Anybody use the Dr. Scholl's thing at the drugstore? I bought Dr. Scholl's insoles for my shoes. And if you use this thing, you can stand on it. It'll tell you which insoles to buy. It'll tell you buy the Dr. Scholl's ones, obviously. But it's great, and it's in a drugstore, and you can use it for free. You don't have to buy the insoles. You can just use the thing. And you can use the blood pressure monitor at Walmart. My blood pressure is always high when I'm in Walmart, but you can use it for free. And we don't have this in law. We don't have it, and I think we should. No one is coming after Dr. Scholl's for the unlicensed practice of podiatry. Right? Not that I know of. There could be some podiatrists out there, busily writing a complaint, but I doubt it because this stuff is actually useful. It doesn't cut into doctors' margins, really. There's no podiatrist going, oh God, I wish people would stop going to the Dr. Scholl's thing. I mean, maybe there are, but I don't think so. I think that we could have things like this. I think things could look like this, right? Has anybody seen this? It's a guy on Twitter saying, yeah, let me ask my lawyer real quick, and he's posting some kind of contract or document to ChatGPT and saying, is any of this illegal? Right? I don't think this is a good idea. I'm not endorsing this, but this is what people are doing because we don't let them have other options. I think that's the big thing to me. We don't let them have other options. We're afraid to experiment. We're afraid to let go of scarcity. And so we see stuff like this. And ChatGPT may do an actually decent job. Not a great job, but it might. I don't know. It gets better all the time. And then this is not an AI endorsement thing. I raised both my hands when John asked that question. I don't know. I don't know if it's a tool. I don't know if it's the solution to everything. Could it look like this? Anybody seen this Garfield product in Britain? This is just launched. A solicitor, different than a barrister in Britain, launched this to help people manage their small claims cases in Britain. And this is an AI tool that's agentic that can take actions on the person's behalf. It's fascinating. I think this kind of thing where someone doesn't have to say, what will my lawyer say? Will my lawyer send the letter? How can they, I better call my lawyer and see what's going on with my case. I think it could look like this. I think it could be this easy. If we offer people things like this that are safe and secure and not posting their documents into ChatGPT and saying, is this illegal? Will the video load? I don't know if this will play or not, but this is, I don't know, let's see. It won't play online? Oh. Well, it's not playing the volume. So, this is a new thing from Adobe Acrobat. There's a better video, but it's only on LinkedIn, where Adobe is offering an integrated service into Acrobat that lets you analyze small business contracts. If you run a small business, you can have Adobe answer your questions about your contract with a supplier, right? You can have it answer questions about the contract's terms. Now, I bet there's some disclaimer that says this is not legal advice, this does not substitute for a lawyer. But isn't this, I mean, like, to me, this is great, right? Do I want this person to pay a lawyer $300 an hour to review a 5-page contract on a deal for them that's like $1,500, you know, like in monthly revenue? No, I don't think that makes sense for this person, right? I would much rather them go to Adobe and have their questions answered. I want Adobe to do it right. I want the questions to be answered in a good way, but I don't want to prevent this. I think it could look like this. I think our future could look like this. Let's see if I can go to the next slide. No, I don't want to play it. As I mentioned before, I work in legal tech for nonprofits for legal aids. And a lot of the stuff that we work on helps people, right? As John mentioned, you know, we run Law Help Interactive. Honestly, like, Law Help Interactive is a huge part of what we do. It serves over 1 million people a year, 1 million form completions plus on LHI. And that's not people just starting a form, that's people completing a form, going all the way through the process. It's astonishing how much it does, right? LHI is a huge part of our program. It's massive, and it does a lot of good. However, I do see projects where things get so complicated because of the rules around things, because of the way that our structures are set up within the court system, the way that we have to do things to make the court stakeholders happy, to make the lawyers happy, to do things like that. I see things where we end up building something really great, but, you know, and I say we in the global sense, not pro bono net, right? Things don't go as planned, right? It happens. And I think a lot of it has to do with the rules and regulations that are in place. I think the rules are well-intentioned a lot of the time. I think that they can be a hindrance a lot of the time. I think we need to figure out where that happens. The reason I put this picture up here, this is close to where I live. I live in Tampa, which is in Southwest Florida. And you can tell because there's water on the ground. There's always water on the ground. And there's always little office parks and things like that. And there's this great sidewalk, right, that's outside this place in Tampa. And it's built really nicely, built really well. It's got like an accessibility ramp there. It goes into the parking lot. It goes over to the street that way. And it's got handrails. You can't fall off of it. It's built to spec, you know, like they did some sort of survey when they built this little office part. Oh, wrong way. But this is the end of it. This is where it goes. Right? It goes nowhere. It even has like a blocker thing. And that's because they have a law in Florida that if you build new construction, under like certain provisions, you have to put in a sidewalk. Does the sidewalk have to connect to anything? No. You have to block it off, right? But you have to build and maintain this, right? And I think a lot of projects in legal tech kind of fall into this trap. And I hate it. I hate when I see things that don't go anywhere because lawyers, and me being one, I bag on lawyers a lot. Lawyers have set up the idea of scarcity, right? And we end up with situations like this in the court system where there's some sort of tech tool that we spend a lot of time on and it goes nowhere, right? And I hate stuff like that. One of the big questions, and I think about eviction a lot, when we think about helping people with eviction cases, is the goal to give people lawyers or is it to keep people in their homes, right? What is our ultimate goal? It could be both, but really and truly, is it lawyer or is it we want people to stay in their houses? We want them to stay in their apartments. We don't want them to get kicked out. What's our goal? We act as if in eviction cases, we want people to have lawyers, right? There's a great article in the Stanford Law Review, and it's linked in the comments or whatever to this, but you can look it up. It's called Lawyers Aren't Rent. It's great. I love that title because it's true. Lawyers aren't rent. Lawyers don't keep people in their houses. Rent keeps people in their houses. Paying rent keeps people in their houses. If I stood up here and told you that the solution to hunger, to people going hungry, was that everybody had to have a nutritionist, you'd think I was crazy, right? But we act as if the solution to people getting evicted is lawyers. It's not, we don't ever say, well, it's rent, right? If people could pay their rent, they wouldn't get evicted, right? If landlords accepted the rent that they paid, they wouldn't get evicted. Landlords want to get paid rent. People want to stay in their houses. Lawyers aren't rent. And the point of this article is that the real benefit that lawyers provide in these eviction cases is that they help people access emergency funding to pay their rent, to stay in their houses. It's not that lawyers are suddenly able to raise some like novel habitability defense on behalf of their tenant and string things along with the landlord. It's not that. It's that the lawyers help them access funding to pay their rent, right? And I don't know that I agree with, like their point about, economics and things like that, but I definitely agree that lawyers aren't rent. We have to start thinking differently. There's even research out there, and this is linked, and I can give you the link if you want it, that giving the right to counsel actually could raise rents for people. That this is a downstream effect, now that we've had right to counsel in different jurisdictions, that it could potentially raise people's rent and actually create a detrimental effect on renters as a whole in certain jurisdictions. It's fascinating, right? I think we default to, well, you gotta have a lawyer, right? You can't use the Dr. Scholl's thing. You gotta have a podiatrist. You gotta have a lawyer. In my opinion, we have to start realizing that lawyers aren't the only solution, right? We have to start realizing that. And it's been going on far too long. Anybody know who Norman Dacey is? Anybody? He wrote a book called How to Avoid Probate, a book. He wrote this book and he offered it for sale. And the New York bar went after him for the unlicensed practice of law for writing a book, right? And the case, as far as I know, and y'all can correct me because y'all are all academics, I am not, obviously. It didn't get really resolved, like in my mind, like in a final way, right? It was kind of like, I think they settled or something like that. But it's fascinating to me that somebody could get sued. I'm sorry? Oh, I heard an echo. It's fascinating to me that they went after him for writing a book about it, not giving advice to live people, but for writing a book, right? But we have to get away from that mentality. I think that the idea of abundant law could look like changing this to this. This is a New York notice of appearance form in criminal court. They did a study where just changing the format of the form and the instructions to the form reduced failures to appear by 13%. Just doing that on paper, changing the paper, right? Not AI, not ChatGPT, changing the paper. I think it could look like this. When they incorporated text messaging, the rate of failure to appear went down even more, right? FTAs are terrible because you get a warrant out for your arrest if you don't show up for criminal court. You get arrested because you have another law enforcement encounter. You lose your job. You can't pay your child support. It's a downstream spiral, right? It's terrible, but we could do things like this. We can do things like this. This isn't AI. This is just paper. This is text messaging, right? I think we have to stop treating the symptoms and focus on preventing disease. That's what I think we have to focus on in my world. I think we have to look upstream. I think we have to think like Jon Snow. And this is the pump. If you haven't seen this picture before, this is the pump. It's still there. It's like a memorial thing that he convinced them to take the handle off of this pump. Turns out this pump was pulling up sewage water and people were drinking it and getting cholera. And just taking the pump handle off, helped stop the epidemic. I think we have to look for things like this. I think we have to stop thinking about how can we enforce scarcity? How can we enforce like lawyers only, lawyer first. I think we have to think bigger, and I think we have to take the pump handles off. So, and I think I've run out of time. So thank you. Switch it back.
Questions, time for discussion.
I'll switch it back. Maybe.
While people are thinking of questions, raise your hand if you've got one.
I just have another example for you from the Dr. Schultz thing. So I went to the UK and I needed some reading glasses because I'm old. But I also wanted ones that weren't quite so magnification to open up computer, right? So I would do 2 pairs of glasses. And I got looked at something and I looked up. It was awful. And I thought, well, how hard could it be to get some glasses ordered from an online eyeglass place that were lower mag and then higher mag bifocal, right? Impossible. Couldn't do it. Couldn't find any anywhere in black. You can get regular bifocal, you get blank glass, and but you can't get it too close up because they want you to go to the optician. Their patients lobby for that, and they said, if we did that, we wouldn't come and we wouldn't be able to protect their eye disease. That was the reason.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of that.
I just read an article yesterday about 1930s American Automobile Association car clubs. So they used to offer a phone number where if you got into a car accident or had some sort of problem, you could call them up, and they had, and the AAA had lawyers on staff to answer your questions about your legal problems and things like that. And it was wildly, all you had to do was join AAA. It was wildly popular, and they were sued by the State Bar Association. And essentially, they had to stop doing that because they were giving unrepresented legal advice. And it was sort of, and I'll find the article and I'll stick it in the link. And by the way, I put the link into your
Thank
Adobe
you.
Assistant in the Google sheet. It set precedent for how we think about unauthorized practice of law 100 years ago. And we've been playing that ball field, playing under those rules all that time. So
another example, what John's talking about, I'm worried about education. I've been this trade for many years, but I have lately like contracted with ChatGPT and I'm going to ask you questions. I'm getting I mean stuff I'm really not cool. And I actually asked it after one particular useful session, why are you good at this? And I thought you said your answer was a pretty good answer.
Yeah.
And so basically people like you are doing things like they're doing. In numbers far beyond even that, it's able to identify better sessions and also worse sessions. Maybe 20 probably better. And train itself or video train itself on compute itself on those sessions. The one where it seems to be working well, it values will highlight. So I'd say contract laws and stuff like that, I'm good. And then I bounce to my lawyer and I get the direct paper half an hour. And, I'll get a year and nay, we'll say, yes, it's good. but it has to be, it can't just be, I think people don't have a legal background. I'd be more wary of that, but having some, that comes before. That's the whole way.
Yes, AI won't replace lawyers, lawyers who know AI will replace lawyers who don't, that kind of thing. Garbage in, garbage out. Why don't you feed ChatGPT critical legal studies and really reform the law? Because I got a little lost in your presentation, I guess, with the analogy of like what the pump is for law. Because the law is not only retrospective, but retrospective. The problems, like, it is a band-aid. Law itself is a band-aid for conflict and for the issues that arise with the violence that is necessary to perpetuate capitalism. So if we're talking about, scarcity being like, can you go into what you think a
Yeah. So I think there are many pumps, honestly. I think there's many places in the system where we have to take the handle off. I don't know what all those are. I know what some of them are. And I think lawyers, I've thought for a long time that lawyers see themselves as trauma surgeons, especially in like legal aid, right? That we treat the problems that come into us as we find them, as we see them. And we don't, do anything past it. I mean, like, we, again, in the royal sense, like, lawyers are bad at looking at, okay, can we do a root cause analysis of why these people are coming in, right? In Florida, in eviction cases, you have to pay the entirety of the amount in dispute into the court registry within like 7 business days, or it's a default, right? That, to me, is a pump handle, right? If you want to prevent people from getting evicted in an eviction case, maybe we need to rethink that requirement, because people are getting evicted because they can't pay rent, right? And then you add that requirement. If they have a real defense, they can't raise it unless they put in the entire amount that the landlord claims they owe, right? It's things like that. I think we need to think, and I think lawyers can think of themselves almost as systems engineers or procedural, process or procedural engineering, like there's some term for that I can't remember right now. But looking at the system as a whole and saying that is where the problem is coming from, right? It's there. It's that people can't pay rent, that they're getting evicted. It's not because landlords are greedy and want, to pay rent. That's like, obviously they are. They want people to pay them rent. But it's, something else upstream. I think we have to think upstream from that. I don't have the answers on that. So your question, like, where's the pump handle? I don't think there is one. I think there's many. And I think lawyers are best equipped as the engineers of society, almost, as the new priesthood, baby, that we can look at the system and say, those are where the problems are, right? It's going to take time. And I think there's a lot of competing interests on trying to keep that, from happening or happening in different ways, things like that. A lot of politics are involved. Legal aids are prohibited from lobbying. Did anybody know this? I know David knows it. Yeah. Legal aid organizations that receive federal funding are prohibited from lobbying to change the laws, right? They can educate, but they can't lobby. They can't say, hey, we have this problem, we should think about changing the law to fix this problem. They're relegated to fixing the problem, or relegated to treating the symptoms, right? And I think things like that are what needs to change.
The system by design is sadistic. We were talking yesterday at the speakers meeting, it's 98% failure rate for those who apply to unemployment after DeSantis changes. It was designed that way. Why are we working with an injustice system to try to provide justice? I think there are lawyers who are thinking differently, and I think there are these like procedural engineers already in existence who have written for decades on how we must change the law, that it is necessary for us to continue to exist, for me personally, to continue to exist without, slapping a misdemeanor on me for dressing in a particular way.
And I can't remember where it came from, but there is a phrase, and I will have to Google it, but it basically says the purposes of a system is what it does. That you can't look at the stated purpose of a system, you have to look at the outputs, right? And if we look at our legal system that way, it's kind of frightening, right? To say the purpose of this system is what it does, right? We can't say that it's a system of justice if it commits injustice, right? Over and over and over. There are injustices that happen, tragedies happen, right? But if the overall impact of a system is perpetuating injustice, then maybe we need to rethink things. The purpose of a system is what it does.
Say your ChatGPT is amplifying those biases. And you can see very clearly, like, you can't search for slurs, you cannot put slurs in there. As somebody who, really likes to research transgender studies, you need to be able to search for slurs. You're not going to find historical documents otherwise. So to, I'm sorry, ChatGPT is doing the same thing. It's designed this way in such a way that you cannot input this information, that it denies the information that would question the system itself.
All right, two things. My student note is almost as old as conference, and what I wrote about it, like, those paper forms are almost impossible for anyone to actually use. This is from an elder law perspective, so I'm glad to see, in 2025, someone's actually thinking about that. But one of the things, and I think it gets to some of the things that you're trying to get at is, we talked about some of the issues, but here we have an audience of, law librarians, law faculty, law technologists, others. What can we be doing, what can we be thinking about in terms of us that we can sort of address some of these issues so that when you're actually looking at ChatGPT, they can actually find the stuff they're looking at, and then when people are asking, looking for help, they actually can do some stuff. Because here we are in this academic space.
Yeah, that's
What's the most radical thing that you do?
the most radical thing. I don't know. I don't know what it is. I heard an interesting question when ChatGPT first came out, and someone asked me, people are going to be looking for legal information from ChatGPT, right? How can we as legal information providers start making content and have ChatGPT crawl that content and then give people better answers, right? How do we do that? And it got me thinking. I was thinking of how large the training corpus is for ChatGPT and how much legal corpus is. And it's like that much to this much, And I was thinking, if you put more drops in the ocean, does the level rise, kind of thing? I don't know. I honestly don't know. I think that, Margaret Hagan has been an advocate for working with the technology companies. And I don't want to put words in her mouth. She's amazing. If you haven't read her stuff, she's awesome. And I think, to me, that's kind of the right approach as well. I don't think Google is out there thinking twirling their mustache, we're going to give people bad legal advice. I have talked to people, who work around Google, and they seem very, very aware that they want to do the right thing, and, their motto is don't be evil, right? I don't. It's not, they don't be evil. Yeah, right. Don't look at the stated purpose. Look at the outputs. But I think AI is so new. Even though if you go on LinkedIn, everybody's saying if you're not using AI, you should go dig a hole and get in it. I think it's still so new that there's opportunity for influence from the right people. I think there's opportunity to guide it. I think there's opportunity to write articles on why some things are good and some things are bad. I see the legal industry focusing a lot on, oh my God, the hallucinations. Another lawyer got popped for hallucinated cases, right? And that gets all the press. And what I don't see is, has somebody gone in, there's a data set called WildViz that is a record of chat, privacy enactment, chat GPT and Llama and things like that, chat logs that are anonymized, but they use it for research. I would love to see somebody go in there and catalog it and see, are people asking legal questions in there? How do we analyze that? We can see some frequency. Now, granted, these are the models from 2 years ago or 3 years ago. And so we shouldn't be saying it doesn't give good legal advice. Well, obviously it doesn't, because it's a frontier at that time model. But I think it'd be really interesting to take that and write a paper and say, look at how many people are asking for legal advice about these issues, right? Obviously there's some need that's going unaddressed globally, because this is global stuff, right? In different languages. Do things like that, make recommendations, advocate for, not just policy at the government level, but advocate for internal policy, advocate for testing the models out, improving them out in specific ways. I can't tell you what those ways are. You probably have different opinions than me. Benchmarking, exactly. Like there's legal bench, right? There's legal bench, which measures accuracy on like research legal questions as if asked by lawyers, right? And then Margaret Hagan has done work on benchmarking, like how people receive the information. But I think there's so much more to be done there on benchmarking. Is this a helpful legal answer to somebody in need, right? Does it get them the resources? And what do we want it to be? Do we want it to tell them, I'm not a lawyer, go talk to these people? Or do we want it to give them an answer? Or do we want it to be a combination of both, right? What do we want? I think, John, one more question, or?
Sam, thank you very much. Like I said, I found links, I stuck them in the Google
Oh,
Sheet.
thank you.
So your virtual people, if you couldn't see his videos, you can follow them through that link. And we've got 15 minutes for a little break and then our first set of sessions.
Thank you.
Let me shut things off. Should I leave the Zoom session?